Hi teachers, this is Nikki Swain and I'd like to welcome you to Write Bright. You will need to go to writebrightstation.com, click on the Training tab and select Teacher Videos. Here you will print out the printables that go along with this workshop. Today's workshop is scoring grades 1 and 2 essays for Common Core source writing. Write Bright is an elementary writing curriculum for grades kindergarten through 6th. It offers a choice of both prompt and source writing. Teachers are able to choose a video option that allows our writing coach to join teachers in the classroom for guided writing instruction. Feel free to look around our site or email us at support@writebrightstation.com asking for a free 24-hour access code. We hope you will join the thousands of other teachers finding success with Write Bright in their classrooms. We have 3 different rubrics we are going to be looking at today. First, there's the 4-point scale. Some states use a 6-point scale, and other states, Florida in particular, uses a 10-point scale. We're going to give scores in each of these areas, but you'll want to focus on the one that your state uses. The passage that students were provided with for this lesson was called The Light Bulb. Here it is. When you go into a room, there are lights to help you see. There have not always been lights. Thomas Edison invented the light bulb. Before lights, people used gas lamps to light up their homes. Many people tried to make a light bulb, but they failed. It took Edison years to build a light bulb that worked well. He tried many different things. He kept making changes to make it better and better. He needed it to glow well enough to light a room. In 1879, he made a light bulb that lasted for 40 hours. His hard work paid off, and he changed the world. Students were given this source to read, and then here is their writing task. The prompt says, read the passage The Light Bulb. Think about why Thomas Edison was successful. Now explain why Thomas Edison was successful in inventing the light bulb. Today, students were asked to do informative or explanatory writing. They are supposed to be explaining why Thomas Edison was successful in inventing the light bulb. In your packet, you have the 4 different scales. Just stick with the one scale that goes along with your state. If your state has a different rubric, then later on when you're doing scoring, you'll want to make certain that the rubric that you're using matches what is used by your state. The most common areas that we're looking at are organization. Does it have a beginning, middle, and end? Focus and support. Did the student use details and specific details? Text evidence. With source writing, it's very important that students use text evidence. They actually cite from the text that we read. Word choice. This has to do with their level of vocabulary, their ability to be creative. Sentence structure, and then mechanics such as capitals, punctuation, verb agreement, and spelling. Let's take a look at passage 1 in your packet together. When you score a student's essay, the first thing you want to do is go through with your red pen or your blue pen or your purple pen and mark all the grammatical and mechanical errors, because it's really hard to focus on content when those things are distracting. So go through and mark all the conventional problems. Then go to your score sheet and go ahead and mark the areas of conventions, or it may be called mechanics and sentence structure. Once you have marked all their errors in spelling and capitals, periods, those kind of things, then you can go back through and grade for content. Look at, does it have a beginning, middle, and end? Was it focused on the topic? Word choice, details, citing text evidence. Those are the things you'll look for. So you're going to read each essay twice. The first time looking for the more mechanical and structural errors. The second time looking at content. Looking at the first essay, light bulbs are exciting. We see a spelling error. Thomas Edison we see was is spelled incorrectly. Successful. It should have a period, and the next sentence should begin with a capital letter. He make the light bulb. All right, it needs a period, and then we have a verb tense issue. It should be made. Then they've gone to their middle. This article should be C, tells about Thomas Edison. It say he tried. Okay, it should say it says he tried. Change the Y to I. Many is incorrect. Different is incorrect. Things. It should be things. The student has put a period. It said, sight word spelled wrong, his work, spelling error, pays off, period. We have a verb tense issue. It should be paid off. The next sentence must begin with a capital. He didn't give up. So we would add an E and also the apostrophe in didn't. The ending, we should start with a capital in short, comma. Thomas Edison was, again is spelled incorrectly, a hard spelling error at worker, period. So we have some issues here with this sentence structure. We want to start the next sentence with a capital letter. He did not give up. And again, the E is missing on the word give. Let's take a look at the scoring. So for mechanics and sentence structure, on a 4-point scale, the sentence structure in mechanics would be a 1. On a 6-point scale, the sentence in mechanics would be 2s. And then on the 10-point scale, the overall conventions would be scored a 1. Looking at the errors, and I'm sure you've marked up your paper, this student, while they had a lot of errors, they were still able to convey meaning. That's why it wasn't given in the 6-point scale and the 10-point scale. It was not scored the rock bottom score because the student still was able to convey meaning. They did have a lot of words spelled correctly. They did have some sentence structure where they did have periods and started with a capital letter and it made sense. So while they did have a lot of errors, they did have some things correct as well that allowed you to understand what they were trying to get across. Going back and looking at content. Light bulbs are exciting. Thomas Edison was successful. He made the light bulb. This article tells about Thomas Edison. It says he tried many different things. It says his work pays off and he didn't give up. In short, Thomas Edison was a hard worker. He did not give up. Notice I've kind of read that without the errors. I'm kind of looking for what this student's doing with meaning. The prompt wanted to know why Thomas Edison was successful. And this student did a good job letting the reader know the reason he was successful was because he persevered. He didn't give up. For the 4-point scale, I gave it 3s for focus and organization. It did have a beginning, middle, and end, and it was definitely focused on the topic. For evidence and support, the student only received 2s. It did not have a lot of evidence or support cited from the text. On a 6-point scale, they received 3s, again, in organization, focus, and support, and the student was given 2s in citing evidence and word choice. Evidence was minimal, and word choice was not always good within those sentences. Some of the words were incorrect, or they did interrupt the meaning. Looking at the 10-point scale, the student received a 3 on organization and purpose and focus. They received a 2 in evidence and support. So clearly this student was in the 70-71 range. You'll notice that the 4-point, 6-point, and 10-point scale will not always agree on percentage. They're kind of focusing and weighing different areas differently, so don't be upset if your scores are not exactly the same when it comes to a percentage score, but there should be close. Now it's your turn. Go to passage 2. This passage starts with, let's talk about Thomas Edison. Read this passage once, marking the errors. Go ahead and then fill in on the rubric that you are using that matches your state rubric. Fill in those scores. Go back and read it again for content and fill in those scores, and we'll come back and see how you did. Press pause now. Let's take a look at how you did. Now, you're not looking to be exact. Remember that writing is subjective, so you may not match exactly what these papers have been scored, but you should be relatively close. All right, let's talk about Thomas Edison. As we can see, this one does have a few errors. The word successful, but that's a higher level word, so that's not a problem. Light bulb, there needs to be a period at the end of that sentence. Give needs an E on the end. They wrote keeped instead of kept. And then success needed 2 S's. So there were a few small errors within the essay. Overall, this essay had a beginning, middle, and end. It was organized, it had text evidence, it gave support, it had good sentence structure, and the basic mechanics were correct. So this was a pretty good paper. The 4-point scale, it was 3 straight across, leaving it with an 85%. So this one on a 4-point scale scored as a 3. On the 6-point scale, it scored as a 4. 4s were given straight down. It was also an 85%. And then on the 10-point scale, it was given a 3 and a 3, and then a 2 for mechanics, which is the highest that you can get in the convention area. So it was an overall 8, also an 85%. Check to see if you were close. You should be within at least 5 points of the percent. Go to passage 3. This one starts the lit bub. Read it first for conventions and mechanics, and then read it again for content. Fill in the rubric that matches the one that you use. Press pause and do this now. All right, this passage was relatively short. You can see that there are a lot of problems with mechanics. The lit bub is a lit bub. The lit bub, Edison was lit bub. So we don't have a lot of meaning there either. This is lit bub, so we don't have sentence structure. It says 40 hours. It says he work lit bub it long time. So we just kind of have some words, but we don't actually have sentences. To sum up, lit bulb, the he lit bub, Edison. The conventions and mechanical errors here are severe enough to keep it from having any meaning. So on the 4 and 6-point scale, you're going to have 1s in sentence structure and mechanics, and on the 10-point scale, it's a 0, because any time it's bad enough to affect the meaning, it's going to be the lowest score. Then when it comes to the content, this also was not able to convey meaning effectively. So the student on the 4-point scale scored an overall score of a 1, giving them a 50%. On the 6-point scale, it was also a 1, giving it a 50%. And on the 10-point scale, it was scored a 2, giving it a 40%. Check to see if you scored this paper close to what these are revealing. Let's move on to paper 4. This one is titled, Have You Ever Worked Hard at Something? Please go ahead and read this for mechanical and structural errors, and then read it for content and mark your score sheet. Do this now. Now that you've scored it, let's take a look at how you've done. This student did an excellent job with mechanics, conventions, sentence structure. They had capitals and periods. They did an excellent job with their spelling. So you're going to score pretty high in those areas. In sentence structure and voice on a 4-point scale, I gave them a 3, only because a 4 has complex sentence structure, and there wasn't a lot of complex sentence structure. Mechanics was a 4. And then on the 6-point scale, they earned a 5 and a 6. Again, the sentence structure did not have complex sentence structure, so a 5 is still a really high score. And then the 10-point scale, they scored a 2, because clearly they did a great job with that area. Now, when it comes to content, let's take a look. It says, have you ever worked hard at something? Thomas Edison was a hard worker. This text takes a look at Edison's light bulb. People long ago didn't have light. They used candles for light. Edison tried to make a light bulb. It was hard, but he kept on working. One day, it worked. To sum up, we must all learn that hard work is good. Edison did a good job. This student answered the prompt. They did a good job explaining why Thomas Edison was successful, because he kept working hard. So that was very clear in this essay. On a 4-point scale, the students scored 4s in the areas of content, giving them a 96, 5s on a 6-point scale. A 6, remember on a 6-point scale, a 6 is like high-level vocabulary, high sentence structure, just really those wow words that really impress the reader, and this didn't have a lot of those. So a 5 is still a very high score, giving them a 96, and on a 10-point scale, they received a 4 in the area of purpose and organization and focus, and then a 3 in evidence and support. Again, in order to get that highest score in the area of evidence and support, they needed a little more creativity or higher level vocabulary. So that was scored at a 94. Go ahead and check your answers, and then we'll move on to the next essay. Essay number 5 starts with today is lights and Thomas Edison made the light work. Find this essay, score it, press pause, and we'll come back to see how you did. All right, taking a look at this one, you do see that there's a lot of errors in mechanics and structure, conventions. It says today it should be about lights, and then we needed a period instead of the word and. Thomas Edison made the light work, and they've misspelled light, and they needed a period. And then in this paragraph, it lacks periods and capital letters, which we know a lot of our students struggle with. There's also many spelling errors, as well as in the bottom section. There's definitely a problem with periods, capitals, and spelling errors. On a 4-point scale in the area of mechanics and sentence structure, I gave it 1s. Also on a 6-point scale, it received 1s because there were so many errors, and then a 0 on the 10-point scale. While it's true that you can still understand what the student here is saying, there is in every word, every other word, there's some kind of problem in either spelling. So it was just the overwhelming number of errors in this passage that caused it to get those low scores in conventions. Now, looking at content, the child did better. They were letting you know that this is about Thomas Edison. He worked hard and didn't give up. He tried many things, and then he finally did it right. So that meaning was able to come through. On a 4-point scale, 3s were given for focus and organization and 2s for evidence and support. It could have used more specific text evidence. It needed to give specific details from the text. On a 6-point scale, it was given 3s for organization, focus, and evidence, and then word choice was given a 2 because it had a lower level word choice. And then on the 10-point scale, it was given 3s in both categories. It did have purpose, focus, and organization, and it did have some evidence and support. So it was given 3s in those areas. I would say a lower 3 for the evidence and support area. So the score reflects about a 70. There was a 72. So you should be, within 5 points or so of that percentage range. On a 4-point scale, it was like a high 2. On a 6-point scale, it was a low 3. And then on the 10-point scale, it was a solid 6. Find essay number 6 and score it. We'll be back. Please press pause. All right, let's take a look at how you looked at this essay and how you scored it. As you can see, it has a lot of errors in conventions. The word light is spelled wrong and spotlight should be together. Light bulb should have a period. We should start with a capital letter, and it's, of course, we seen. Why? We know that's an issue. Successful is spelled wrong, but that's a higher word, so that's not as big of a problem. This passage needs an A, and they forgot their verb here. Is on the light bulb. It's said is a sight word, so we want to make sure they're spelling that word correctly. And made. Tried, we would change the Y to I. Many should be an A, and we know things should be things. And then at the end it says Thomas Edison ways to work. So that one didn't quite make sense. We would need a capital, and then success is spelled wrong. So there were a lot of errors. Every few words there was an error within either spelling or some kind of convention. So in the areas of sentence structure and mechanics, it received 1s on a 4-point scale, 1s on a 6-point scale, and 0 on a 10-point scale. Looking at the meaning, the spotlight today is on light bulbs. We've seen why Thomas Edison is a successful. The passage is on light bulbs. It said he made better and tried many things. Thomas Edison ways to work, be a success. So it really struggled here with conveying meaning. There wasn't a lot of text evidence used. It needed elaboration. It needed detail. There was a lot of issues here when it came to content. On a 4-point scale, focus and organization is a 2, and the rest were 1s. So it ended with a 58, which is an overall score of a 1. On a 6-point scale, it ended with an overall score of a low 2. So it was a 60%. It had 2s in organization and focus and evidence, and then it had 1 in the area of word choice. So that was a low 2, almost a 1. And then on the 10-point scale, it received 2s in both the purpose, focus, and organization, and the evidence and support, giving it an overall score of a 4, which translated into a 57%. So check your scoring, and then we'll move on to the next essay. Essay number 7 starts with, "We are glowing our way into light bulbs." Please score this paper, press pause, and we'll come back and see how you did. Let's take a look. When it comes to conventions, the student did a great job. Just a few. Success needed a C, different needed an E. There was a little small issue with it needed a T in invention. So just a few little errors. A lot at the bottom needed to be 2 words. So this one received on a 4-point scale 4s, the highest score you could get in sentence structure and mechanics. 5s on the 6-point scale because it wasn't perfect, but a 5 is still a very high score. And then an overall of a 2, which is the highest you can get for conventions on a 10-point scale. When it came to content, this student did a super job. We are glowing our way into light bulbs. So there's creativity there, voice, word choice, all much higher level. Thomas Edison successfully made it. His success was from not giving up. The article looks at the invention of the light bulb. The passage reports, notice they're citing text evidence that Edison spent years trying different things to make it work well. In 1879, he succeeded in making it light up for 40 hours. His hard work made it happen. Specific details, citing text evidence, all that can be seen and is very evident in this student's essay. Then they ended with, "In closing, Thomas Edison triumphed because of hard work." That word alone gives you that higher level vocabulary, which is really going to help this score. We can learn a lot from Edison. On the 4-point scale, they received the highest you could get, which was 4s, so they had an overall 4, which was a 99%. Same thing on a 6-point scale. They received 6s in the areas of organization, evidence, word choice, focus, which landed them with a 99% and an overall point of a 6. And then on the 10-point scale, this student received a 10, which is a 98%. So clearly this was a higher level paper for a 1st or 2nd grade student. Let's take a look at the last essay, essay number 8. Please go ahead and take some time to score this, and then we'll be back to see how you did. Press pause now. Looking at conventions, there were just a few problems here. We had the word success. We had the word from is a sight word, so this word really should be spelled correctly. Also, the word keep is a word that students should be spelling correctly. A period is missing at the end of a sentence and then a comma after a transition. So there were just a few errors here. On a 4-point scale, it received 3s in conventions. On a 6-point scale, it received a 5 in sentence structure and a 4 in mechanics. And on a 10-point scale, it received a 1. Because while there were a few problems, they weren't severe problems. Let's go back and look at content. Remember, we're writing about explaining why Thomas Edison was a success. Let's light up the world with Thomas Edison. Right away, great voice and word choice. He invented the light bulb. His success was from hard work. This selection is about the light bulb. It says that it took years for Edison to make it work. He had to keep changing it. His hard work made the light bulb work. I've noticed they're using the word work quite a bit. In short, the light bulb was from hard work. We are glad for Edison. So this student was a little repetitive with hard work and using that word work. It had a really strong beginning, but then got a little bit weaker as it went on. Overall, on a 4-point scale, it was a 4 in the area of focus and organization and evidence, and then received a 3 with support because it did grow weak there in the middle. On a 6-point scale, it was given 5s for organization and focus and support, 4s for both evidence and word choice, and then on the 10-point scale, it received a 4 in purpose, focus, and organization, and a 3 for evidence and support. So the overall scores were around 89, 90, somewhere in there. For the 4-point scale, the overall was a low 4. On the 6-point scale, the overall was a low 5. And then on the 10-point scale, the overall was a high 8. Thank you for joining me for today's training, and I hope you will use WriteBrightStation.com for your writing curriculum.